blameless talking Felipe. Sorry. I have a bunch of CAN talks that I've worked on a lot that I'm very happy with. And I gave Felipe the options of the talks, and he's like, actually, we want to hear about planning. And so this is not a CAN talk. I haven't had it. We just decided on this topic last week. So I really mean this more to be an open discussion. I'm going to show you where I'm going and give an example of where I'm going, but this is not a full talk, and so we don't need to take the whole time. But this is a topic that I do care a lot about. It is representative of the direction that I'm going. So, anyways, this is not a full talk. It's meant to be more interactive. Who here is interested in planning? Steve, I know your name's on paper recently, so yeah.
So yeah, so the students, I have to say.
Yeah. I think I was last week. Okay, any interest in embodied AI, AI acting in the real world? Anyone know what regression planning is? Okay, and Charles, unlock, and Charles is done. Okay, it's probably the only place I can go where people will raise their hand. Okay, who does PDDL? Yeah, again, the only place you can go where you get that many hands. Okay, so okay, so we want to do embodied systems planning in the world. I'm not a low-level guy. I won't touch control and robot joint angles and all this. I'm more at the task level of planning. The world is becoming language-based and image-based. And I think, my AI training said the world is full of predicates and objects and logic and MDPs, and they still exist. But, I would have had to switch over in the past few years to thinking of the representation of the world in terms of language and images, especially so you can use these amazing foundation models to do this reasoning. And so, you want to do some planning in this image. And if I wanted to move the cam to the top of the box, I just want to know how you guys would approach that task for anyone who wants to speak up. You see the image, you have a high-level system that can take high-level actions, and you want to move the can to the box. Like, you could maybe have your VLM or vision language action model, right, directly output the tasks for the robot given the image, right? I think the VLA. Does anyone want to work on vision language action models? Steve, it must be a student who works on with you.
I don't work with VLA.
Okay. Well, I think if I go to a conference like that, that's what people are going to say. Like, you should be using a VLA, and that's fair. And I think the VLA is good at reasoning with the complexity of the world and the image, but you've got to train it for the task. And if you have a long horizon plan, the language models tend to get one of the steps wrong, right? They're good at short horizon tasks. The longer the horizon gets, the more that they get things wrong. And so that suggests maybe going to a more planning-oriented approach where you sort of dump the image state to some representation and you use a PDL planner. Has anyone tried that? An image to state description and PDL plan? Yeah. So the nice thing there is you can plan for very long horizons very accurately, right? If your model is right and your role description is right. And I think that does the two problems, getting your model right, and your role description right. So I think, Oliver, in your current work, I do believe you assume a lot's already known about your image. You assume you have the right objects, the right predicates, right? And then once you have all of that, then it's believable that the PDL will work. But I think the challenge with the PDL approach is that you don't initially know how to dump this image to a role state. You can plan it. Okay. So who does, for the planners here, who does forward progression planning, like heuristic search and so on? That's mostly everyone in the world, right? If I asked who does regression planning, it would just be Charles and me, I think. When do you have to regression?
Well, I'm an agnostic.
Oh, yeah. So my problem with forward regression is you need a complete world state to progress. And, how do you dump this image into a world state? How do you dump this image, right, even better, into a world state? If I want the cereal, things about the cereal matter. If I want to get a sock out of the laundry, then the laundry matters, right? So you have to know your goal to know what you're looking for, typically. And the VLA, that's fine, right? The VLA will know the goal when it's using the image to figure out what anybody get in the VLAs have these problems. And you can believe me, I've got experience to show, but you can believe me that VLAs for long horizons just break down. They don't get every step right. But then you go to here and you want to use the PDL approach because that method, the grounds the world state and plans forward verifiable for long horizons. But then you just don't know, how do I turn this image into a description, right? Just asking GPT-4.1, please give me a description of the state in JSON, like good luck. And so this got me to thinking, right? We need models of the world that connect to the open world nature of embodied AI. We need systems that are able to actively query what they need from the image, right? And this is leading me to regression. So I'm going to come back to this. So that's basically this slide. I'll come back to it at the end as a summary. So this was the main part of the talk. And let me just move Charles' head here. Sorry, Charles. Okay, so this is a pretty involved example, but it's the entire work in one slide. So let me go through this, right? We have a human up here. The human utters, it doesn't work on these screens. The human utters, right, instructions. Please heat the bread and leave it on a plate for me. I don't think humans say, please heat the bread. This is an example work. So the human utters a natural language instruction. So that's our goal. And for the agent's actions that are available, we're using something that looks a bit like PDDL, but we're calling it natural language PDDL. In that, we're not necessarily, so, our predicates are no longer well-defined predicates, right? They're actually phrases that have variables in them. And you could have conjunction, disjunction, and the logical combinations. These are fairly simple. But in PDDL, you may know that, you can put O on R if the agent is holding O. And if the agent's holding O, then the effect is that O is now on top of R, right? And the agent's hand is empty. I'm no longer holding anything, right? And you want to delete anything that the agent's holding. And so what we're assuming here is that for whatever robot we have that can act in this world, someone has written down a rough description of what they think that robot can do, right? It can put objects on other objects. It can pick up objects. If it's a kitchen, right, you can boil objects. You can host objects. So someone just have to write this down. It is more in a natural language description. It's more natural for users. I work with some roboticists, and they're confused with PDL. Like, oh, PDL is so complex. I'm like, okay, I didn't think it was that bad personally, but they see the natural language like, yeah, we get this. I'm like, you realize these are actually predicates and so on, but fair enough. But this apparently for some people is just easier to think about, right? And it's intentionally natural language. And we're intentionally going to use LLMs to reason about this. So you don't have to get it perfect, right? Because the LLM is going to reason about it. So here's our human instructions, right? We're going to turn that into a very simple conjunct of properties, right? Here we have the natural language sort of predicates as phrases, right, with the three variables, and conjunctions, right? So we can still have some logic over these phrases. Okay. So we have a goal in natural language PDDL, and we have our action description in NLPDDL. And now we need the plan. So let's, just to see where we're going. We want to heat the bread and leave it on a plate. Right here in our image, we have bread, we have a plate, we have a toaster, and we can, a pot for, I think it's a pot for boiling. You probably wouldn't boil bread to heat it, right? But you would toast it. So you obviously know the actual answer to this. The actual solution here is right here at the bottom, right? You want to pick up the bread, you want to toast the bread using the toaster, and you want to put the bread on the plate. It's not incidental here that we actually draw the action bindings as images, because in some of the simulators, this is what you do. You actually put bounding boxes around what you want to interact with. Okay, so we know where we're going, right? We have this goal and we want to generate this action sequence, pick up the bread, toast it, right, and put it on the plate. Okay, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to dump the entire image to this rich description and try to do forward planning. I want to do what's called regression planning to be able to query the image for what I need, right? So you might start by saying, by asking a VLM, is the bread heated and on a plate, right? And it'll say no. I mean, the bread here is not toasted yet. It's not on the plate. So if you're not in a goal state, then you need to regress to see, well, what other states could lead to that goal state. I'll take you through one step here, maybe. Okay. So in regression, you work backwards from the goal. If you're in logic, it's called back chaining, and in planning, it's called regression. And you work backwards from the goal. And we say the action here, so you have 4 actions, and you can try regressing through all 4 actions. If you try to regress through a pickup or boil action, they don't have any add effects that are in the goal. So you wouldn't regress to them because you know that they're not going to lead to any they're not going to lead to achievement of the goal state. You do note that the put on, right, has the put O1R action has the ability to put something on top of something else, right? We know we need the bread on Y, so we can regress to the put on action. Now, in typical regression, you just match the add effects to the goals, right? And you replace the add effects with the preconditions of the action. But here, the action said the effect of put on, right, is that O is on top of R, okay? And the user instructions always said the bread is on, right? We didn't say on top of, we said on. But when we do regression, we're going to add this extra step where we ask an LLM to say, can we entail, right, that, where was it, put on, that putting something on top of something else is the same as putting it on, right? And the LLM will say, with high probability, yes, that looks like the same description. And so once we see that the predicates or the phrase-based predicates can entail each other, then we'll do a unification, right? So the object O that the action needs unifies with bread, and R unifies with Y, right? What the bread is on. Okay. So now we can regress. We replace the is on, right, with the precondition. The agent holds, right, the bread. And now we don't, and so now we have a new sub-goal, right? That is the pre-image of putting something on, right? Now we just need to be holding it. We know that after putting it on, we'll achieve the goal. Okay, I'm not going to go through this process again, but basically we're using entailment to connect these abstract language descriptions to things that might hold in the goal. And when we do find entailment, we do the standard unification and regression substitutions to regress to the different sub-goals, right? By the end, you have a bunch of free variables that when you instantiate them, will instantiate the actions that we regress through. So now you get one sub-goal here. Can I find something can I find an R that can toast bread? And is the agent near the bread? And can I find a Y, since the Y is a plate? If I can find segments in the image to satisfy this sub-goal, then this sub-goal is enough to execute the plan, which is pick up O, right? O unified with bread. Pick up the bread, right? Followed by toast the bread using the toaster, right? R unified the toaster. And then finally, put the bread on the plate R, because R unified with the plate. So I can ask the VLM, can you bind R, something that can toast bread? By the way, implicit affordance reasoning here. I didn't have to say that toast is toast bread, but your LM knows toast is toast bread, right? So your implicit affordance reasoning from the LM. Right? You ask the VLM, can you satisfy this? What are the segments that satisfy? And GPT-4.1 is great at doing this. And voila, right? It says yes, the bread's here, right? R is the toaster, and Y is the plate. And that instantiates the actions. You give that to your planner, and voila, right? You've achieved the goal. So just to summarize, right? We have a natural language version of PDDL, not just to allow end users to write it, but with the advantage that it's natural language. We're going to use LLMs to help connect the effects to the real world instructions, right? To do the affordance reasoning to realize can X do Y. So we get a lot of generality actually from having the reasoning in the language. We get the verifiability of planning, right? Because this actually is regression-based planning. And now, back to this example, we don't have to turn this world state into a state. At the end of the day, we get sub-goals. And we get to say to the VLM, can you identify objects that satisfy all of these predicates, right? We get to query the image for exactly what we need to achieve the goal, right? And then whatever it segments out becomes the things that we tell our planner to instantiate the actions with. So it really handles in a rich space of observations, right? In a rich space of possible goals. Anything I can do in this room, I can talk to Steve, I can walk to the door, right? I can write on a whiteboard, right? It tells us what do we need to do in each case? What do we need to sense? I need a whiteboard marker to write on a whiteboard, right? I need to be near Steve to talk to him in a noisy room. We regress to what we need to achieve the goal, and we can query that on a VLM. And this works whether your state would be a language state or image state, right? We can query LM or VLM as necessary. So there are lots of like online chat agents for action states language and not image based. So this also works there. So that's the vision, right, for NLP-DL. I'm trying to take my classical planning view of the world and merge it into the modern LM, VLM view. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to take you through table of results. You can probably guess that, because we're verifiable planning, right, we are being a lot of other models and approaches, and I don't think you really care about the details. But it's just the key view here, right? The VLMs are great at open worldness and common sense reasoning and affordances. They're not great at verifiability and long horizon reasoning, right? They may need training as well. On the other end, you're dumping the model, right? To dumping the world to a state and trying to plan forward, right? Requires you kind of know everything in advance and to have fixed predefined objects and relations that make sense. You don't get the common sense reasoning or the affordance reasoning by default, right? And that comes from the LLMs. And the forward search approach requires a complete world state, right? Whereas we want to say, well, what? And again, back to the sock laundry view, like that's really hard to do in a lot of images. So we have the NLP in the center, right? We get the long horizon interpretability and verifiability. We get the regression planning that allows us to ask and query directly what's relevant to a goal. We get models that are in PDDL that actually generalize to a number of settings, right? Because the LLM kind of does the gluing of the model to the world. And so I think that's our vision for NLP-DGL. And it is submitted to iClear right now, and it got some horrible reviews. People hate it. So I think we're probably going to put it on an archive here, so just to get it out there for the world to look at. I don't know, this is my vision to sort of deal with problems that we're seeing on both the pure VLA end and the pure replanning and symbolic planning end. So Okay, not as much discussion as I wanted. I just told you a bunch of things for a while, but that's where we're going. But I'd love some questions or feedback if you have any. Okay,
So regarding NLPDL, great talk anyway, it's really inspiring. But regarding the NLPDL, I'm just wondering, I guess you mentioned the motivation is for the robotic people to understand it a little bit better. But does it, on the other side, compared to classical symbolic PDL, does it help the Bayesian language model or large language model to understand and to with natural race by formalizing that in a natural language?
Does it help what? Does it help what?
So by formalizing PDL in a natural language, does it help the vision language model to understand this thing better?
Okay, we're not asking the visual language model to output the entire plan, right? We're actually asking it just a bunch of, initial for the planning, we're asking a bunch of entailments. At the end, we need to see, does our sub-goal hold for the image? Then we're asking the VLM. So, the point of language is that humans, I'm in a PDL model, right? But the human's going to specify something, right? Please eat the bread and leave it on a plate for me. That may not align exactly with the PDL, right? So I somehow got to connect from what the human said, right, to my formalism, right? And rather than give the LLM the PDL model and the language and say, try to find a goal that fits in this model, right? I'm using entailment reasoning along the way to try to connect the goal language, right, to also this action language that someone wrote down that may not also align exactly with what the goal looks like. So we are doing planning here, right? The role of the LLM is coming in at the entailment stage to connect the ad effects to the goals, and then at the end to query, does this statement hold for the image? If it does, can you retrieve the segmentations? I think if you do classical planning too long, you just imagine the world always conforms to your PDL model, right? And it doesn't. Humans say all sorts of things. Even one all sorts of things. I mean, you can actually have an LM even generate. Once you give an LM a few short examples of this, it can generate new actions that you might be able to do. So I think we're facilitating the ability of the LLM to reason about the planning in a more planning style way, right? As opposed to just saying to the VLM, VLA, just here's my goal, here's my image, figure it out, right? But for which that does work, but you typically need a lot of data. This works out of the box.
So just to summarize, there is a syntactical gap between natural language and the formal language that we use in PDL, and large language model is really good at bridging that gap.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to state it. Thank you. And also implicit affordance reasoning, right? Can a toaster toast bread? Can a boiling pot toast bread? Or can a pot toast bread? So it also implicitly will do the affordance reasoning that you need in robotics. Like no one just writes down everything, right? The affordance of all objects, but the LLM certainly know them. Yeah. So model misalignment with goals, human misalignment with the model, right? Affordance reasoning, right? While still actually having a planner at the core to get the long horizon verifiability. Yeah, sorry. So I think has arms next.
Yes. But I'm actually curious. In the real physical robot, usually obviously the robot works in 3D environment. And then, so I'm curious if you then have like the image has occlusion.
Yeah.
Would you
partial observability
extending it? Yeah.
Yeah. So here, we started off with a fully observable state, right? But the absolute next step is to have a history, right, and have partial observability. In fact, Jack, who worked on this, has an RIF paper on what happens when you can't sense this, right? How would I actively sense, like, which goals should I prioritize and try to achieve? And how would I actively sense the things that I don't sense here, right? And we actually formalize a value of information. It's very causal, so we call it value of observation. because the OI is not causal. And so we try to prioritize what do we think we can sense, right? And we'll try to search those things up. You know, the toaster might be in the cabinet. Let's open the cabinet door, right? He has a very nice way of using common sense reasoning in LM with a value of information style computation to try to determine what to actively sense. So I think, yeah, going toward the partial observability is the next extension of this, and we are actively working on it. But this is fully observed. Yeah.
It's sort of a related question, I guess. There are some parts of the state which are not visually representable, right? So the bread is heated is not something that you can necessarily measure from the image. And so that may be something that an LLM could help with, right? Say, well, if the bread hasn't been in the toaster or it's been a long time since it was in the toaster,
Yeah.
So how would that fit into the regression?
So I think, you know, if we had some history, right? Currently, so I think the regression planning assumes you can tell when the bread's heated or not heated. So it's this is really a perception problem and not so much a perception state tracking and not so much a planning issue. But I think you get to the sub goal, right? Oh, well, you know, you ask, is the bread heated, right? But not only had the image, if I knew some history that I could also encode in the context, then I do think, yeah, the LM and the VLM can reason very much, okay, I don't have any evidence I've heated this bread previously, right? It probably is not heated, and therefore probably cannot achieve this sub goal or this goal initially that's heated. So I think, you know, you would need some, yeah, this is where the state would not just be the current image, but also some history. And you're still asking the LM, what we ask the LM, right, based on this history and context, you know, is the bread heated? It's kind of saying no. So I think with historical context and common sense reasoning, I think that is resolved. If the bread had been recently heated, is it heated enough? You know, at some point we actually want to pop out because we can ask the user, you know, this bread was heated 10 minutes ago, right? Do you want us to reheat it? And so, you know, when we're uncertain, the time you query the user is when you're uncertain whether you achieve the user's goal, right? When you're uncertain about it, then you reduce your uncertainty by asking the user directly. That's a key thing I've learned in computational recognition and by the AI. So when you're uncertain, you query the user because it's agent-based, but you have the history feeding in. I do think the one case where I think this might fall short, I think LMs are really bad about reasoning about time, right? You know, they see all the world just collapse into one time point, right? And they really screw up time reasoning or temporal reasoning. So you may actually need a bit more of a temporal model, right, to support some of the reasoning, especially how quickly things cool off. I'm not sure the LM can do that directly. But I think it's a perceptual issue that, given enough context, hopefully the VLM in the history could answer. I don't think I have a better answer than that.
So Charles has a question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Charles. Good.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Like, I mean, so regression in and of itself, yeah, I mean, you still get unwieldy expressions. As you regress, you can get kind of an unlimited number of objects that you might hypothesize, et cetera, et cetera. So,
well, not unlimited, right? Because the regression for k steps is only going to introduce, you know, k.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's exponential in the worst case. But yes, and then sensible otherwise. But it's not, you know, for long plans, you're going to have an explosion in terms of, you know, the expressions you have to contemplate.
Well, yeah. So I mean, the sub-goal tree, if you go for Horizon H, the sub-goal tree does get larger. You can prune a lot of that out.
Yeah, I mean, so that's where I was going with this. I mean, you can do a bounded forward search as well, right? I mean, you can say, you know, I want a plan, and my plan is going to be able to appeal to some limited number of objects, 10, let's say, and you know, I get to choose the character of those objects, and then having chosen the character of those objects, then the affordances that are available to me with those objects are there. And going to Steve's comment, that it may not be that you see the state of the world where you happen to be now, and so maybe to be able to plan, you need to be able to hypothesize objects which don't exist in your field of view. You haven't actually had eyes on them in the last 10 minutes, but you're going to need them to achieve the plan. So they must be somewhere, and part of the plan is going to be.
Yeah. Well, the regression will tell you what you need to observe. It doesn't guarantee you have observed it, right? And that's where the active sensing comes in.
Scott, can you just summarize the question?
Yeah. Sorry. Let me think here. I'm getting multiple points here. One is that you're gonna have to hypothesize things that you don't see. And I should be clear, Charles, that the regression is not the regression itself, and until this final step that you're saying, does this stuff go apply to an image? The regression itself is not using the image at all, right? So we're certainly just using the model to derive what we have to see to achieve the goal. One of Charles' other point was that this this tree does grow exponentially, and that is true. We have lots of pruning techniques that do keep it rather small, but it does grow. And he was saying, could you use forward planning? I think, this is where, like, when you talk to the roboticists, they hate this work, right? They say, no, Scott, you just need to do a goal-directed dump of the world into a state, right? So know what goal you have to solve when you do the export of the image to the state. I agree with that. You have to know the goal. Because whether I want to write on the whiteboard or talk to Steve or go to the door, right, that's going to tell me how I formalize the state. And they say there's a huge fans of, replan, right? You got it wrong. What went wrong? Fix the model, replan, and go again. And that is an approach, and they do use it, and it does work. I just want to point out that there is this more regression approach. It doesn't have to constantly make mistakes and replan because you wrote down the world in the wrong state. It tells you again what you need to observe. But yeah, I think forward planning, Charles, can work and does work, right? But it's just a matter of getting the state description right and knowing how to get it right.
Yeah. And then, the other thing, irrespective of whether you're forward or backwards, I think, we were just at the conferences, and KR was one of the conferences that was co-located. I think, having, being able to express knowledge and being able to understand how actions update your knowledge, sensing actions in particular, I think.
Okay, we are going towards sensing, and if you know sensing and planning, you might want to use a knowledge state or epistemic planning, right? Which tries to divide what you know and what's true in the world, and connect the two. And I think everything that was commented on, the partial observability, the active sensing, the epistemic state. Yeah, these are actually all on Jack's agenda. Unfortunately, he's only one person, so he's got a lot of work to do. But yeah, I'm looking to bring in a lot of the planning stack, right, that we know and love, right, and the partial observability stack, right, and value information. Trying to bring all these tools into this sort of hybrid planning natural language VLM view of the world. Right? And again, just trying to interpolate between what I see as two extremes that we have on this slide.
Definitely, yeah. It's obviously super interesting work. My other comments. I had two comments when Philippe invited me to ask.
That was one comment. Okay. Yeah, just quickly because I think we have a whole full room here.
Oh, okay. Sorry. The other one was just this escape hatch where you just ask the user for the truth when you're not sure if you know the truth, whether it be with respect to a goal or what have you. So again, just I think in general, having a mechanism for an agent to understand whether it's achieved a goal itself without appealing to some sort of oracle or human.
Yeah, no, I think, but for me, you want to query the user when you're uncertain about what they've asked for. I mean, I guess you could query them for help as well, but that's going to be annoying when your home robot's constantly saying, do you think the laundry's on top of this? Just figure it, like I tell my students when they ask questions I want to answer, just figure it out, So I think you can ask the user about what they word ambiguous about, because humans are incredibly bad at explaining what they want, right? They don't specify things at the right level of specificity or generality. So I think when you're uncertain about what their goal is, you want to query, or whether the current state does achieve their goal, you want to query. But I don't think you want to query the user to aid the planning. I think that would probably annoy most people. That's just my personal opinion.
Let's run through the questions. I'll let the room ask
Yeah.
questions.
Thanks, Charles. Okay, I don't want to keep a captive audience here for a while. I just wanted to tell you about some, directions. Directions I have here that are taking this amazing planning crowd. Like, we have one of the strongest planning groups here at the ANU, and I just want to tell you about some tricks that may help you may help the planning crowd maybe connect to VLMs and VLAs in ways maybe they haven't thought of. And I know Oliver and others are also interested in doing this maybe more from the vision perspective as well. So thank you all for attending. I'm happy to stick around, but I'll release you.